You know, in VR, our eyes get to see these absolutely incredible worlds. But what happens when what you see doesn't line up with what you can actually feel? That's when things get really, really interesting.
So, how real can VR actually feel? It seems like a simple question, right? But oh man, the answer is anything but. We've gotten so good at making VR look real, but making it feel real? That's a whole different challenge. And it really makes you wonder, where does that feeling of realness even come from?
And that right there is the central problem, the big missing piece of the puzzle. VR can whisk our eyes and ears away to these amazing fantasy worlds, but our sense of touch? It's kind of left behind, stuck in the real world just holding a plastic controller.
I mean, look at this. It's a huge disconnect, right? On one side, you've got these stunning, almost real worlds you can see. But on the other, well, you're just holding a controller. The physical feedback is, let's be honest, pretty basic. You fire a laser, you get a buzz. You touch a wall, you get the same buzz. There's this massive sensory gap we need to close.
Okay, so the obvious question is, why don't we just build better hardware? Well, it's not that simple. It turns out that creating realistic touch feedback, the fancy word is haptics, is a huge engineering nightmare. Think about it. Just trying to simulate something as simple as squeezing a soft sponge is crazy hard. You need a device that can create all these tiny, precise forces, and you need to cram all that tech into a controller that's not bulky or super expensive. It's a really, really tough problem.
Which brings us to some really smart researchers over at Keio University. They looked at this whole hardware problem and decided to tackle it from a completely different direction. And they started by asking a question that honestly changes everything.
What if, instead of building better hardware, we could just trick the brain? Now this is where it gets super clever. The idea is, forget trying to perfectly build reality with motors and sensors. What if you could just convince someone's brain that it's feeling something it isn't? What if you could just hack our own perception to make the virtual world feel more real?
And this is a great way to think about it. Imagine your brain is a judge in a courtroom. It's listening to two key witnesses, your eyes and your hands. Both are telling it what's real. But these researchers decided to make one of those witnesses lie, just to see who the judge would believe. When your eyes say one thing and your hands say something totally different, who wins?
So to set up this showdown between the senses, they needed a very specific tool. And this is it. They built a custom cable-driven device. Now this isn't something you're going to buy for your game console. It's a precise piece of lab equipment, and it's designed to do just one thing, but do it perfectly. Create the exact feeling of squeezing a soft object.
So how does this thing work? Well, it's pretty straightforward. You, the user, squeeze these two little thimbles. As you do that, sensors measure exactly how much force you're using. A motor then kicks in to provide just the right amount of resistance back at you, and at the exact same moment, the virtual box you're seeing on the screen squishes down. It's this neat little loop connecting what you do with what you see and feel.
Okay, so the stage is set. They have a reliable witness, your hand, which is feeling these very precise, real forces, and they have a witness they can manipulate, your eye, which is looking at a virtual image. It was time to get one of them to lie and see what the heck would happen. And this is the big question, right? What happens when what you see just doesn't match what you feel? If your hand is getting the feedback of squeezing something super soft, but your eyes are seeing a box that looks really stiff and barely moves, which sense do you believe? Which one wins out?
The experiment itself was actually beautifully simple. People were just asked to compare two virtual boxes and say which one felt stiffer. In the first condition, no conflict, everything was normal. What you felt matched what you saw. A soft box looked and felt soft. But then they threw in the full conflict condition. Your hand felt a soft, squishy box, but your eyes saw a super stiff box that barely squished at all. The two witnesses were now in a full-blown argument.
So back to our courtroom analogy. Who did the judge, the brain, believe? When the eyes and the hands were telling completely opposite stories, a decision had to be made. And the verdict? Well, it was absolutely shocking.
Just look at these results. They are staggering. When there was no conflict, people were basically perfect, almost 100% correct. No big surprise there. But when the senses were in conflict, whoa, their accuracy just plummeted to less than 30%. And get this, they weren't just guessing randomly. They were consistently and confidently wrong. Yeah, the paper puts it pretty bluntly. Participants got it wrong more than 70% of the time. Think about that. Their own hands were feeding them the correct information, the real physical data,
but they chose to believe the lie their eyes were showing them instead. It's wild.
So the verdict is crystal clear. In this battle of the senses, our sense of sight completely overruled our sense of touch. It wasn't even a close fight. Vision just dominated the whole conversation. The brain listened to both witnesses and chose to believe the liar.
Now, at first glance, this might seem like a bug in our brain's code, right? A glitch in the system. But what if it's not a bug at all? What if it's a feature that we can actually use to our advantage?
This whole idea is called apparent stiffness, and here's the key takeaway. Your brain figures out how stiff something is by combining the force it feels from your hand with the squishiness it sees with your eyes. And it turns out the brain trusts the visual information way more, to the point that it basically ignores what your hand is actually feeling in terms of how much it's moving.
And that is the big illusion advantage here. This isn't a bug, it's a feature we can use. It's like a built-in shortcut in our brains. We're just wired to trust our eyes. And for anyone making VR experiences, this is incredible news. It means you don't have to build the world's most perfect, complicated haptic hardware. You just need something that's good enough, and then you let the visuals do all the heavy lifting.
Just think about the power of this hack for a second. It means we can take a relatively simple device and make it feel like you're touching a huge range of different materials. You could simulate a soft marshmallow or a hard brick with the same controller, just by changing what you see on the screen. This could make truly realistic VR way more accessible, with simpler, cheaper gear. It opens up all kinds of doors for more immersive games, training simulations, you name it.
So what this all comes down to is that our perception of reality isn't this perfect one-to-one recording. It's more like a story that our brain constructs for us. And if we can figure out the rules of how it tells that story, we can create these incredible illusions. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? If our perception of reality is this flexible, if we can be tricked this easily, what's the next illusion we're all going to believe?